Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Wheatley.
Hello.
Come sit down.
Hello.
So, shall we talk a field? I know there's people here. It's weird, isn't it?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Shall we talk a field? Okay, so it's quite hard for me to sum this film up. So I'm going to give slight...
You're going to hot potato it to me, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to slightly throw it to you. But I would like to say that there are elements that we can talk about. It's set during the Civil War. We see a little bit of that, but that's not really what it's about. There are indications of alchemy and magic within there. There's a lot of mushrooms. And it's all set in a field. Do you want to kind of unpick it a little bit without, spoiling the trip that people can have when they see it on Friday night?
Yeah, I think you've got the elevator pitch right there. It's like basically the idea of people escape. From a research that we did, we found that lots of people would kind of, during a battle in the Civil War, might just decide not to do it anymore and just walk off from both sides and then just disappear into the woods or whatever. So that's kind of what's happening here. They kind of, at the beginning, we get a load of 4 or 5 characters come out of the hedges, and then they decide just to knack off. But the adventures that they have afterwards are particularly mushroom fueled. So obviously none of you people have ever taken mushrooms. I can see by your clean cut faces, But if one was to take them, then it might be a little bit like what happens in this film, I'm told by my experts.
Why particularly the Civil War? Was that something that you... I mean, given that if we look at your previous films, which is, about a kind of small-town gangsters, about hitmen and the occult, and about, a kind of murderous caravanners, the Civil War is not necessarily where you would have thought you would have stepped to.
I don't know. I mean, I think each of the choices after each film's, we could have the same conversation, couldn't we? Going, why are you doing a film about caravanning after an occult hitman movie? So I think we really wanted all of us involved, and Amy Jump, who wrote it, and Laurie Rose, the DOP, and we all chatted about the idea that we wanted to do something that was period, and we really fancied that, And I love all the costumes and stuff. And then my son came on set. And it was the first time he'd ever reacted to my job like I was actually doing something. Because usually, he comes on and it's just a load of wet people in cagoules or something, and it doesn't look like anything's happening. But when you come on and there's guys with swords and stuff, it was...
Yeah, they're doing acting.
Yeah, doing proper acting in the past and creating something that's,
But what's interesting about that is I think that generally when we think about kind of films, period films, what we tend to think of is that BBC idea that we must see the cobbles and we must witness the interior of an inn in order to understand that it's in the past. And actually, this is entirely in a field. So the only notion that we have is in the past is in the costumes and the way that people are and the plot and the way they react to each other. But it's essentially in a field. So we don't have any of those kind of references.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we thought about a lot when we made the film is this idea of kind of that there's no context to it. I mean, there's no date, really. You could pick up little bits about what time period it's set in through the dialogue, but it's not in your face. And the thinking about that was that, basically if you travel back in time tomorrow and you hung around with these guys, they wouldn't explain anything. It's only in films that people get into all this exposition and go, oh yes, of course, it's the Civil War,
Yes, the king has just walked around the corner.
Yeah, and so we wanted that kind of immersion, so that you felt that you were out of your depth and you were trying to struggle with the history in a way that you would do if you go abroad to a country that you don't know the culture and you're always a couple of steps behind it. So I think there's no quarter given in the way that the history is delivered in this film.
No, not at all. I mean, I've seen the film once, and I presume when you go and see it, you may well have the same reaction. You actually want to go back and see it again because you feel like there's bits that you're missing that's going on. But there is essentially these kind of bands get together, and they're all very different characters. We'll talk a little bit about the characters, and then we'll show a clip. But there's one particular character who's played by Reece Shearsmith, who is very different from the others, who appear to be just essentially soldiers, kind of mercenaries. And he has a slightly more elevated position, doesn't he? He's like an alchemist, a magician type.
kind of an assistant to.
Yeah.
He's not even that grand, you know.
He's hoping to be.
Yeah. He's studying under his master to try and get to that position. Yeah, I mean, what we really liked about the idea of it was it's the first film that we've done that's about groups of people coming together who don't know each other, who have to become friends, you know. And we after making Kill List and making Sightseers and Down Terrace, really, Amy and I both felt a bit like wrung out, like we'd made these films about quite cynical, nasty people, and we wanted to make something that was a bit more about friendship. You know?
Not so much about messed up families.
No, exactly. So so there is that thing of. Also, it's the first one we've done that's just all men. There's no women in it, but then it's written by a woman, so you get that kind of weird that balance. But the story of it. One layer of it is obviously what we just said about people dropping loads of mushrooms and going out of their minds. The other one is a nice tale about men getting to know each other and becoming friends.
I think that is a good cue for our first clip because they are getting to know each other in the first clip. So should we have a look at that?
Go. High octane stuff.
So they're bonding over essentially food, jokes about bums. You know, it's kind of it's
men.
It's men together, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they do bond, but then there's it's hard because I don't really want to give away the plot because the plot is kind of almost it's not superfluous to the film. It's perhaps
Miranda.
No, it's not. But it's like the joy of the film is not necessarily in the plot. I would say.
Yeah.
Part of the joy of the film is the way that it is filmed. So it's filmed in black and white. There's a particular kind of sequence towards the end which is very interesting and visual.
Yeah.
Can we say trippy? Can we say trippy?
I'll say it.
Okay.
It's very trippy.
It's very trippy. It's not like it doesn't look like films that we see. That contemporary films. It looks very different to me. That's obviously a deliberate decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff. It's harking back to those kind of midnight movies that were made in the 70s, you know, and seeing those like, in a way, we were looking at Eraserhead and not necessarily stylistically, but you know what that film is, the content of that film, and how people kind of came to that movie, and we were hoping to kind of make. It'd been bouncing around in my head for a long time of making a film that was like a Roger Corman kind of psychedelic trip film, but also making something that was consciously a midnight movie, and it was not polite, you know, and but it was also a lot about seeing it in the cinema and seeing the incredible, you know, being kind of visually spoken to, you know, and that the experience of watching the film was as much as it was a big part of the movie itself, you know, so. And Amy and I toyed around with kind of psychedelic sequences and stuff, and how we could incorporate them into movies. And then this kind of married together with this idea of doing something about the Civil War. After we did a load of research about mushroom circles and people grinding mushrooms up into dust and blowing them into people's faces, and lots of kind of magic that was happening around that period. And it seemed to fit with these two kind of ambitions of going, we want to do a period film. We like psychedelic movies, and then suddenly it kind of came together.
And when it's shown on Friday, given that the idea of a kind of midnight film, which is the idea that you come to it late, you've been out, and then you commune with with other people in it that are watching it. That's kind of part of the experience of it. Or you would come home and watch Eraserhead on a video with your mates, wouldn't you? On Friday, you're launching the film, and you're launching it over lots of different types of media, aren't you? So you can go see it in a film, you can see it on the telly, you can stream it all at the same time. Is that to kind of enhance that experience, a similar kind of late night communal experience?
It's more to do with like when I saw Kill List on Film 4, and it was right at the end of the cycle of, you know, a movie will come out in festivals and then in the cinema and then on DVD and then finally it hits TV. But the hit TV, for my films anyway, is the biggest audience you ever get. You know, it's a massive audience, far dwarfs all the other mediums really. So I kind of thought this is really weird that we saved the biggest audience till last. Why don't we have that on the first weekend? And then they, you know, if there's going to be any word of mouth generated, it'll be generated by that big audience, and that they would, you know, talk to their friends maybe and say they like the film, and then they'd all go to the cinema and see that, and or buy the DVD. And there's definitely stuff of, you know, the TV screening. There is always a spike in the DVD sales as well. So, and also it's everyone's efforts, instead of being in little dribs and drabs for the PR, the actual all the kind of buzz around the film could be generated in one moment. So that's kind of that was the main start of the main thinking, to try and use that Film 4 channel and go, God, it's here. we can actually tell loads more people about it in a way that we wouldn't be able to do normally because we could never afford TV ads, you know. So yeah, that was it really, and just to, you know, to get it out there to as many people as possible.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because that goes against quite a lot of thinking around films, doesn't it? The
Well,
idea is that you launch it on the
yeah.
on the big screen.
Yeah, well, it's counterintuitive, but for my understanding of the way my movies have gone in the past is that they, you know, the audience that go to see a film in the cinema are not don't sit at home having a dilemma on whether they want to save money on going to the cinema or not. They're going to the cinema, whatever, come hell or high water, and they want that cinema experience. I mean, I think if you're Iron Man 2 or 3 or whatever, you've got more of a worry because you're opening on a load more screens. So then you might be biting into that audience, the casual audience. But with a film like this, you're maybe opening on 15 screens. So most of the population of the UK can't see it, you know, because they won't travel more than 15 minutes to go to the cinema. So at that point, they're all excited about it and they never get to see it until like really down the line. So you might as well just show it to everybody and then they can make a decision, you know, they can talk about it to other people.
And also, if they have the same reaction as me, they'll want to go back and see it again anyway.
Yes, it was cleverly designed like that.
for us to do that. It was shot very quickly. It was shot in 2 weeks, is that right?
Yes, 12 days, yes.
12 days. That is really quick, I understand, for films.
It is, but not really. You
Why
know,
not?
in the world of like Roger Corman, he was doing lots of films in 12 days, and Shot Corridor was shot in 12 days. You know, there's a precedent for it. But it's basically could only be done in when you've got very specific locations that you don't have to move around a lot in. And our film was still shot outdoors, so it's natural light. So that a lot of the arse of filmmaking is about moving lamps about and turning them on and off. So once you eliminate that, then it goes a lot quicker.
That, and is it not when you're outdoors waiting for the planes to stop going over?
Yeah, there's that. You know, trippy as the film is, justifying helicopters and jets flying in the background is hard. Yeah.
There must be something that also makes that experience, given it's such a short shoot, and you're making quite an intense film, that makes it even more intense if you're doing it in such a short time.
Yeah, I mean, we got that. We'd had that experience from shooting Down Terrace originally, the first film, which was even quicker, it's like 8 days. And like the thinking behind it was that, you know, the shortest film you can shoot is a football match, which is 90 minutes. They do that in real time, and no one complains about that or says it's an amazing feat, you know. But it's basically a documentary that's shot, you know, that's shot in the field in one location, basically. So, you know, that's where I got the idea from. But and a lot of documentaries are, you know, primary. The Pennebaker documentary about JFK was shot in 2 days, and that's a feature-length thing. So again, it's not, you know. So as long as the actors know their words and you know what you're doing, shooting that quick isn't really a problem, you know. And 12 days seems a lot of time to shoot 90 minutes when you think about it.
Yeah, it's just that one isn't used to that these days. You're used to kind of things like taking 6 weeks or even longer, I suppose, surely.
Yeah, I mean, it really does depend on how the film's been designed. If it's lots of different locations, we have to, I mean, like Sightseers, we did in a month, which is still quite quick, but it's a lot of locations, a lot of moving around, a lot of logistics, and that you can't hurry that. You know, that has to just be what it is. But yeah, if you're shooting just in, you know, 3 or 4 rooms and it's all in one location, then spending months on it maybe, you know, a bit strange.
Yeah, a bit weird. I read also somewhere that the black and white was part of that. Choosing to shoot in black and white was actually part of that as well, given that you don't have to worry about light changes so much.
It was kind of, that's something that occurred to us as we were shooting, and it also occurred to us when we'd looked at, we'd researched other movies that are shot in exterior black and white. And when you turn the sound off, you realise that there's a lot of weird light continuity that no one seems to ever have noticed, but in colour is like glaringly horrible. But I mean, the black and white for us, Laurie and I had done a lot of tests over the years and kind of starting to try and understand why we liked it, why it was so seductive. And we kind of came to the conclusion that it was the difference between the two, between colour and black and white, is that with black and white, you're processing texture and your eye is drawn to faces. But with colour, you've got to deal against like big slabs of blue and green and their costumes, and you get to their faces last. So in a way, black and white seems oddly more immediate and more real to you because your brain is designed to look at faces.
Yeah, and you have some very interesting faces in that film.
Yeah, they every nook and cranny of those faces has got mud rubbed in it, so they look particularly kind of detailed.
Shall we see the next clip, which introduces a kind of bad guy, we can call him, can't we?
He's an ambiguous character.
Yes, an ambiguous character.
Spooky.
That is essentially a small scene about the quest, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the exposition scene.
That is the one exposition scene as to what is actually going on.
Yeah.
What is actually going on. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about kind of alchemy and magic that was around there, because I know that you have done your research, despite the fact that claiming you're not, a kind of expert around the Civil War. But the idea of searching for conjuring things up, believing in alchemy, believing that things could be found in that way by divination, that was kind of prevalent then, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot. When we started reading around the subject, there seemed to be quite a lot of people trying to get money to go on treasure hunts and raising money to go off on these ridiculous things, but obviously they're just pocketing it. And there's a lot of kind of, just the swindling of rich, stupid people to go on these things. And they were always looking for this stuff and digging it up in fields. So that's something that had come from the period that had inspired it. But I just think that people were just readier, to believe in, if it's said in a kind of straight enough face, with a straight enough face, people would believe anything. It's like, when I pick up my iPhone, or I pick up or I watch a television. How does it work? You could tell me anything about that.
Yeah,
about how
magic.
It is literally magic. I'm confident in my position as someone in the modern world that I'm, au fait with these things. I've got no idea. I can barely wire a plug. Beyond that, I've no idea. So, I think that there was lots of experts at the time kind of telling people stuff that everyone was just swallowing, lock, stock. But yeah.
And off they went to find treasure.
Yeah.
Given that this film is so different from all your films are different, but it is a particular kind of step sideways, do you ever wonder about the kind of reception that you will get to a film of this sort, or doesn't it really bother you?
Obviously, in a cinema full of people booing and throwing ink at me would be bad. Would be fundamentally terrifying. But not really. I mean, I think you kind of what the bet that you have with the audience is that what you're betting is your own kind of link to the audience. So I mean, I've always tried to make films that I wanted to see myself, and then I hope that there's a lot of other people that are a bit like me, and then that's okay. Beyond that, you can't do anything. As soon as you start thinking in terms of, this part of the audience and that part of the audience, and if we can make them happy and them happy, then you're lost, I think, because it's like, then it's...
But that's actually quite hard to do, given that, people worry about money and they worry about audiences. To make a film as you do, films that you want to make and films that you believe will be liked by people who have the same taste or slightly similar taste to you, that is actually quite hard to do. Yeah,
but then this film is kind of, I'd say, modestly budgeted, so it can't really lose in that respect. So that kind of commercial, in a way, it's a bit difficult to grasp, but it's an incredibly strange film, which is also incredibly commercial at the same time. But it's no one's gonna get their Ferrari off the back of it, but it will make its money back, and that's, for me, that's good. That's what it should be about. Everyone gets paid, and the thing makes its money back, and we live to fight another day. I think if you're taking millions and millions of pounds off someone, you're supposed to get it to come back.
And also, they're allowed to stick their oar in.
Well, yeah, exactly. But then they should, because it's like, that's the agreement, isn't it? You're the more money, the more people that you have to get in, the broader the kind of the audience is, then the more people you have to, you have to make like it. Whereas my stuff, you don't so much. So I don't worry when people have absolute Marmite reactions to stuff, because it's just, that's kind of good in a way.
Yeah. I'm going to show one more clip, which is when they're looking for treasure, which we're never quite sure what they're looking for, but they have to dig, and we are going to see them dig.
That black dot is basically whenever I do my tax return, I see that.
approaching you.
Coming towards me and enveloping me. And go,
I don't actually want to kind of unpick the film anymore, given that I'm hoping you're all going to go and see it, and it seems slightly, pointless to unpick it anymore. So I'm going to ask you, the lovely audience who's sitting there, patiently, and yet looking gorgeous, if you have any questions for Ben. If you don't, it's not a problem. I can carry on talking pretty much, for the whole evening. But it's always nice if you have questions.
oh, Christ, loads.
Look,
That's terrifying.
Okay, I saw you first, so yes.
Thank you. I noticed in one of the first clips it was raining. Was
Yes.
that real rain, or was that you...
Magic of cinema rain. No, it was real rain. And then whenever it rained, we would go, production value. Because to make it rain like that would be really expensive and difficult. And we'd have to set up loads of pipes and they have to colour the water so you can see it in the whole 9 yards. But no, it was real, absolutely real. And luckily for us, it kind of went on for a long time. So we managed to get the scene done in the rain. But it was really odd. We just sit, with a bunch of grown men sitting around in the rain going, you just don't get an excuse to do that normally, unless you're at a festival or something.
Great. Well, it's fortunate rain then.
It was good, but basically it's something that we'd come to after doing sightseers where you just go, it's weather, it's Britain, and it's going to do something horrible to you. You can't count on it. So on sightseers I got quite a good set of waterproof clothes. So I don't fear the rain. Bring it on.
Yeah.
There was a question over here. I saw someone actually. Yeah, with you. Yeah.
Hi. My question is, how long do you spend at the script stage, and what's your kind of approach to the script before you actually start shooting?
The script on Field in England had been worked on over 15 years, and I'd written many, many drafts of it. And right at the end, my wife, Amy Jump, who co-wrote Kill List with me, did her draft on it. And this is a mark of how our collaboration works. She changed the character names and the title of the film. She changed the dialogue and everything that happened in the film. So I looked at it and went, I read it, I thought it was great. And my last act of writing on that script was to rub my name off the front of it and go, So, yeah. And she's interesting because she's an editor as well. So marrying those two jobs together makes for, I think, is the kind of unique thing that we've got going in our movies, that the writer gets to do the final draft in the cut, which is usually a writer in an edit suite is a very rare thing indeed, usually. So in cinema anyway. So that's kind of our process. But I've been writing with Amy since I was about 17. So I'm used to this kind of rough handling in terms of collaboration. So you can usually spot our scripts. If it's a Ben Wheatley and Amy Jump script, then I've probably had more of a go. If it's Amy Jump and Ben Wheatley, then she's probably got rid of a lot of what I've written.
And there was a question on the front. Was it you? Who was? Yeah.
As a filmmaker, do you usually, or is it usual?
Hold the mic a little closer. Yeah,
Is it usual for filmmakers to actually be the author of the script, or do they normally have scripts given to them?
There's lots of different flavours of it. Sometimes it's writer-directors, sometimes they're producers as well. So they'll look for material and bring to, or sometimes you're hired in. So the thing's all set up, and they go, who can we get to do this? And they get someone in. And they interview a lot of different directors, and they see who'll make the fit. So, yeah. So there's lots of different ways of doing it, really.
Do you have your preferred way is to provide the script and do it yourself? Is that right?
No, I've made 4 films, and 2 of them I've been involved in the script writing, and 2 of them I haven't. But I've done a lot of TV as well where I didn't write the script. So it's a different experience, but it's perfectly valid each time. I don't have one or the other where I'm desperate to write them and direct them all the time. I know what my strengths and weaknesses are in that respect. And the advantage of when you've written the script yourself is that you can pull pages out of it during the shoot and go, I don't want to do this bit anymore. Yeah. And no one complains. But if you've got the writers on set and you do that, they all get the hump.
Yeah, or they're acting in it as in sightseers. That can be quite difficult.
Yeah, that's you have to be a bit more gentle.
So it's not like you and Amy just
No,
going, no.
no. You just kind of fold the page over. You don't rip it out and go, I can't film this crap.
So I'm really sorry, we're running out of time for that scene. Anyway.
Can I just one other thing is the characters in there, I could smell them and they were horrible.
I think that might be me, actually. I'm sorry.
Yes?
I just wondered about the casting process, because talking about the characters, were they people, the actors that you had in mind beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, what we tend to do is that on all the films that we've done, pretty much, there's been a rewriting stage after the casting's set to make sure that the actors can say the words, and it sounds a bit strange, but I find that like bad performance is not always the actor's fault. It's often the script that they can't say it. And everyone has a different meter in the way they speak, and sometimes you can literally write words that people can't say, and they come out of their mouths like lead bricks. So we kind of, once we've finished the casting process, Amy on this case, would tweak the script. But then some of the parts were written with people in mind. So the Whitehead part was written with Reese in mind, and Michael Smiley's part was written, the O'Neill character was written for him. He was like the first person we were thinking about when we were putting the project together. So yeah, I mean, casting, on the 4 films that I've done, the casting's been something that we've had it's part and parcel of the making of the movie, rather than something that happens very early on, rather than, you have a script and you think, who could be in this? Who's about we can stick in this? It's more like the casting starts, the film starts with the casting and then go, with Kill List, for instance, it was like, I really like working with Michael Smiley. I really like working with Neil Maskell. How can we get them together? Also, I like Mianna Buring, and maybe she'd be as good as Maskell's wife. And what story fits that? So we kind of we go the other way than they usually do.
And when you do, I mean, there's very different accents in a field in England.
Yeah.
And given that once you're casting it, if you don't know the actor quite so well, it must be quite hard to get the meter of the way that they talk. Does it change when you're actually filming it?
No, it's usually all right by that point. But it's. I've had it from when I started writing. I don't know. You learn these little bits, which are so bleeding obvious. When I say it out loud, you go, well, that you didn't know that. But the first thing I made, first short I made, I'd never read the script out loud before we shot it. So when the poor actors tried to say the lines, it was like, oh God, that's terrible, But it's stuff like that. You do the read through and you listen to the read through and you go, right, okay, this stuff's not working. Why? Is it because they're not putting 100% into the performance on the read through or the rehearsal thing, or is it because it's just the way that they speak just doesn't allow them to say the words, and then you change it.
Yeah.
But to be honest, this script was the least changed of all the scripts that we've done. There's no improvisation in it, and I think we lost like 2 lines out of the whole thing in the edit. So it's solid, that one.
And I thought, yes, hello, the back.
Hello. You said that you thought this was a midnight movie, and traditionally midnight movies have things other films don't, like sex and violence. It was very much a product of the 60s and 70s. But sex and violence is fairly easy to come by now. So what do you think a modern midnight movie has to have to differentiate itself?
I think a modern midnight movie has to be a kind of just a different vision from the mainstream as much as possible, and a kind of something that you just can't get anywhere else. So, obviously, seeing some clips of people eating soup very slowly and digging a hole may not be floating your boat on that right now. But these are the vagaries of an event like this. But I think there's stuff in it that I'm hoping that will, people will enjoy and certainly enjoy late at night and on big screens and loud.
Anybody else?
So you've mentioned Roger Corman quite a lot in the things that you've been sort of talking about. Would you say that was is that a sort of deliberate model that you've taken on as a filmmaker, of his sort of traditional sort of low budget, quick shooting, sort of turning it around? And do you think that's a model that the British film industry should sort of take on a lot more, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of shooting quickly and shooting modestly, and I'm not saying cheaply because that sounds bad, but I think it's allowed me to make more films than I would have done, just by the experience we're having at the moment where we're putting together a bigger budget movie. It's all about the finance, and it takes bloody ages, It's a lot of meetings about finance, and it all just goes on and on and on, or I could be making another film. And I think that as soon as you let go of that idea that you need lots of money to make a movie, then it's total freedom. And the thing for us was that when we made Down Terrace, we realised that at that point, Down Terrace took 8 days to shoot, cost $6,000 to shoot it, and that means that at any point you can jump out and make a film. We could have done it cheaper if we hadn't have put everyone up in hotels. So. And once you realise that you don't have to ask permission of anybody to make a movie, then that's great. So there's no barrier to it anymore. There's no gatekeepers to the money necessarily. There's no one telling you whether you can or cannot make a movie. So that's more the attitude. I don't know. Corman's very inspiring in that the energy of the thing, and the fact that he gave. He was like a vampire feeding off very talented people, and get them in and just give them a chance, and giving lots and lots of people chances. I think that's brilliant. But also his other business model was kind of riding headlines and finding out things within the news and reacting really quickly to it. That's not necessarily what I'm up to so much, but yeah.
Do you think that modern equipment, meaning kind of cheaper, smaller, more accessible cameras, more accessible kind of editing suites you can have in your home, makes the idea of people, brings the idea of filmmaking closer to,
absolutely,
in inverted commas, more ordinary people?
Well, the fact that you can, all that stuff about filmmaking is interesting, but the thing that I think that's really made a difference to say something like that Field in England is digital distribution, so that if you don't have to strike a print. So the print's costing grand and grand each one that you make. So it limits how many screens you can go to. And then those screens have to be packed out and make loads of money before you see any money back. So, a digital print hardly costs anything, So that's a massive revolution just in itself. So I think that, this film couldn't have been distributed like this, and it couldn't have been made like 5 years ago. And we found that with Down Terrace. We couldn't have made that film the year before. We couldn't have made it. So I think that's where technology's really helping. And
very exciting, given that it's changing all the time.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. But the flip side of that is that there's loads of pencils around, but there's not loads of brilliant drawings, So, I mean, I always used to say that when I was a kid, I used to think, if only I had a camera, I could make loads of films. And then I borrowed one off someone, and I still didn't make any films. So it's like, it's not all about the equipment, it's about the will to do it,
Yeah. And final question was from you. Wait for the mic. It's there.
Were the costumes made from scratch, or were they sourced?
So we were going to make them from scratch, and then we went to Angels, and they had all the costumes from the Devil's Whore. It's like 2,000 Civil War costumes, and they were all amazing.
Fantastic.
So it was brilliant. So we went around and had these things put. Emma Fryer was our costume designer. Just put them together for a mismatch from all these different bits and bobs. So. Yeah, God bless Devil's Whore, I say. Fantastic, saved our arse.
That's great. Well, I think we're kind of done. I'd like to thank you for being a lovely audience, and I'd like to thank Ben Wheatley.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.